That's what I said, out loud, from the back of the church, while the choir's last Amen was still hanging in the rafters, and folks were dabbing at tears with tissue from the ushers' brass trays. Heads turned in a ripple, like wind across a wheat field, toward the woman in a simple black dress with a grey pixie cut and a thrift store satin clutch tucked under her arm. Me. Very much breathing. Very much not in the cherrywood casket up front under the lilies and the blown-up photo of me at 52 with my hair still long and my smile still unguarded. Pastor Gideon Pike's mouth fell open. My daughter, Melanie, beautiful, brittle and furious even before she recognized my voice, scraped back her chair so fast it squealed across the tile. The mayor's eyes narrowed. The developer's smile froze. And Constance Moreno, my attorney, standing with a blue folder at the lectern like a conductor about to raise the baton, didn't miss a beat. She flipped to the last page and held it up like scripture. "I said," I repeated, walking forward down the aisle, feeling 100 stares prick my skin. "Read the clause. Before I rewind this whole mess, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. I read your comments at my kitchen table with a mug of tea, and I swear, I answer as many as I can. Now, let me take you back to how we got here, 10 months earlier. I've always been a woman who knows the weight of a nickel. My name is Evelyn Lake. I'm 69 years old, and for most of my life, I have been invisible on purpose. Millerton, Ohio, is where we live, where I raised my daughter, where my husband Victor worked the floor at the rubber plant until the night shift, and the stress took him at 56. River City, steel bones under faded paint. A place that smells like rain and asphalt, and the cinnamon roll glaze at Henry's Bakery if you're up before 6. People wave here with a couple fingers off the steering wheel. They'll mow your lawn if your back goes out and ask no questions, but everybody knows everyone's questions anyway. After Victor died, I kept the house and sold the Buick. I took in hemming jobs and mended everyone's winter coats. And I did okay, because I always kept something aside. When other folks were buying flat screens, I was buying an iron. When they went to Vegas, I planted tomatoes. Show people what you've got, and they'll take it. That was something my father taught me the first time I came home crying with a gap in my 7-year-old smile. Last front tooth gone to a bully with a bigger lunch. Keep your treasures in a coffee can, Evie, and let the world think you collect buttons. When the bottom fell out of Millerton after the plant layoffs, I learned a new kind of quiet. It's a silence the city makes when you walk past a row of empty storefronts with paper over the windows and those old-timey for lease signs yellowing at the edges. It's the quiet inside a church hall when the bingo caller announces a pot that used to be triple. And it's the quiet you learn to carry around so folks stop looking at you like a problem to solve. Being poor makes people either tender or mean. Either way, the gaze feels the same. So, I pretended. No, I cultivated. Being broke. It's different. Remember this detail. The dent in the passenger door of my '04 Corolla. I never fixed it. I'll tell you why later. My daughter, Melanie, came up quick and pretty, clever as a fox and stubborn as a mule. She went to Kent State and came home with a marketing degree and an appetite for things I couldn't give her. She loved me, of course she did, but she didn't love being seen with me. She hated my coupons. She hated the way I would ask for my leftovers to go at a white tablecloth restaurant. She hated the way I'd roll coins. She hated the way I'd say no to a brand new pair of boots when the old pair could be resoled. "Mum?" she would say, all flat vowels and polished edges she learned interning in Cleveland. For once, could you not be small? Small. As if keeping a house from falling apart is small work. Then she met Graham Rutherford at a glossy fundraiser for the Riverview Arts Council, where her agency did the campaign. He came with a last name like a season of polo and a family like a set of antique luggage, heavy, expensive, and a little scuffed if you know where to look. His mother, Eleanor, chaired 3 boards and wore pearls to Pilates. His father had died, but his grandfather still had a portrait in the country club where the oak smells like bourbon. They donated to everything with their name on it. Keeps folks from looking too hard at the things they're taking. Maybe that sounds uncharitable, but I come by my opinions honestly. The first time I met Eleanor, she looked at my hands, not my face. My hands, with the old seamstress scars and the calluses from lugging groceries 2 buses across town. She smiled like she had just won a contest where the prize was a landfill tour. "Melanie is such a bright light," she said, squeezing my fingers so lightly it was as if she didn't want to catch anything. "Graham is very lucky." The really was silent. Between them and Trent Halpin, the developer with the handshake like a politician and a grin like a man in a teeth-whitening ad, the Rutherfords were very interested in Milliton's comeback. Trent said words like revitalize and activate and work live play. It always sounded to me like code for move poor folks where we can't see them. But what do I know? I'm the woman with the dented Corolla and the coupon envelope that always seems to have a spare for the person behind me in line. What I didn't know then was how deep Trent's deals ran. How many palms were greased with caterers' receipts and donation plaques. How the mayor needed a ribbon to cut before the next election. How a church's promise of a brand new family centre can shut up a congregation about the fact that their old one sits empty all week while the neighbourhood kids get bussed halfway across town to practice in a gym that leaks. I didn't know any of it. And I did. Winter, the year Melanie got engaged, was dry and hard. The river shrank in on itself. The wind came off it, thin as a knife, and cut right through my coat, like it remembered where the weak seams were. I took a job 3 mornings a week at a thrift shop near the stadium. Threaded hope. The kind with a bell that clangs when the door opens and furniture arranged like someone's living room from 1997. I manned the register and priced donations and kept a notebook in the drawer where I listed who needed what. A boy who comes every Thursday after school, look for size 10 cleats. Widow asks about space heater. Check with Don back room. It made me feel like I could put small pieces right when big pieces refused to budge. It was at that counter that I first saw Trent's men, not him. He didn't do his own walking around, but men with clipboards and boots that hadn't seen mud who took photos of the building across the street like it was already gone. That building was the old Sprague block, 3 floors of brick and hope. On the corner, River Laundry, the place where Miss Catty had been washing the city's clothes for 18 years. Smoke shop, pawn, empty storefront with the faded words Ethel's Hats visible in late afternoon sun. Upstairs, single rooms with shared bathrooms where 6 men from the plant lived on the cheap and sent half their money home to parents in Kentucky or kids on the west side. Trent had a plan for it. I could smell it on the wind, that cedar-sharp scent of new construction money and the lemon bleach smell of scrubbing out the lives that came before. Miss Catty came in with a bag of sweaters and a look like concrete. "They taped a notice on my door," she said, eyes hard. "You see this, Miss Evelyn? 30 days. They say the landlord's selling." "To who? Some shell thing. What is a Cicada Porch LLC?" She laughed, one bitter note. "They want me gone. Where am I going to take folks' quilts? You know Janine's boy got asthma. All their laundry is line dry. You tell me." "Let me see the notice," I said. I looked at it and felt the map in my head light up. For 10 years I had been collecting coffee cans under the bed, metaphorically speaking. Union life insurance payout. The house we paid off before Victor died. The little nest egg my mother left me in a CD that matured when I turned 60. The rent from the upstairs room I let to a grad student who paid on time and left me a thank you note every month with his check. And yes, those tax liens you could buy if you paid attention at the courthouse, offered in the far corner of a weekday morning when most folks were at work, and the only people there were a couple of men in cheap suits and me pretending I must be lost. If someone didn't pay their property taxes, you could pay them, and if they didn't make it right, you could own the place. Cracked stoops, peeling paint, roofs you could hear the rain through. Those were someone's bad investments. They were my treasures in coffee cans. I put them in small LLCs named for wildflowers and embarrassing childhood nicknames, spread out like beads so nobody could see the necklace until all the beads were strung. Cicada Porch LLC was mine. So were 12 other LLCs with names like Penny and Thread, Juneberry Partners, and Mill Diamond. Did I own half the city? I wouldn't have said it like that. That's what the news said later, when they got their hands on the spreadsheet and circled my face in red, the way they do when a story is about greed or angels. But yes, if you took a highlighter to a map, a lot of it would have gone neon. I owned them not to squeeze. I owned them to guard. I let rents stay low when everyone else's went high. I fixed the worst leaks. I taught Miss Catty to read the tax notices so she'd never get surprised again. I gave the men on the 3rd floor a fresh deadbolt and bought one of them a new pair of work boots when I saw him duct taping the old ones. I did it quietly. I did it smiling. I did it broke to anyone who asked. I did it because the minute you show a wolf your pocket is full of meat, he'll stop looking at the flock and start looking at you. Remember this detail. The name Anita Qualls. She appears later like a jack-in-the-box. You won't see her coming. The first time I tried to warn Melanie was over meatloaf. She came by on a Wednesday, like she always did when she needed clean laundry and a hug she pretended not to take. I made her plate and poured her a glass of iced tea and watched her scroll while she took 2 distracted bites. "There's a notice on River Laundry," I said. "They're going to try to evict Miss Catty. You know how she volunteers for your church drives and what she does for kids' uniforms. It's the Sprague block. Trent's men are taking photos." Melanie set the phone down with her manicured finger still on the screen. "Mom," she said. The way she said Mom could be a sigh when she wanted it to be. River Laundry is quaint, but it's a blight. Trent's building something beautiful there. There'll be live work lofts, a coffee place that's not a front for meth, an art space. The people who will live there aren't the ones who live here now, I said. You're building it for someone else. That's called growth, she said. Do you know how you sound? Like last chair at the town hall, the lady who thinks fluoride is mind control. I am telling you, I said, jaw tight. There is a way to grow without stealing the sunlight. She pushed the plate away. We can't keep everything the way it was so you can feel like you still live in 1989. She laughed. A small, cruel sound she picked up like a badge. Besides, it's not like you could help, even if you wanted to. Mum, you can't even fix your car door. That stung. It stung the way truth does when you can't defend it with the whole truth. I could have fixed the door 10 times over. I kept the dent for camouflage. What I said was, you're marrying into money, not wisdom. Not all money is smart. What I hear you saying, she said, cutting me off, is that you're jealous. Jealous of the ability to walk into a room and have people pretend your jokes are funny. Of dinners where the bill could be a month of my utilities. Of being able to call the mayor on her cell. No. But I didn't say no fast enough, and in the pause, she found something to label me with. After that, it was like watching someone go underwater with a smile on. Brunches I wasn't invited to because it's just the girls from the club and you'd be bored. A shower where my gift was carefully placed out of sight because it was from Target. At the engagement party, they sat me near the kitchen door and asked if I could get some ice when the bucket got low. Eleanor did it sweetly. "You don't mind, dear, do you? Your hands look useful." Useful. You know what that word means in a mouth like that? Servant. At the wedding, I stood to the side while the photographers arranged the Rutherfords on the steps of the country club like they were a yacht catalogue. When the toasts came, Graham said something about being embraced by Melanie's family, and half the room laughed because I was it. Me and cousins, who sent apologies because they couldn't afford the gas to come. Mayor Lila Vance raised her glass to the union of Old Millerton and New Millerton, and Trent clapped as if he'd built both. The band played At Last like it was a joke, and I danced with the nephew of the man who used to work with Victor, and he smelled like Old Spice and grief. Pettiness is a poison everyone has a taste for if you leave it in the kitchen long enough. The month after the wedding, the HOA for my little duplex sent me a notice for a $150 fine because my trash can lid didn't sit flush after the raccoons had a party. The president, Denise Klein, called to leave me a voicemail. "We're holding everyone to the same standards, Ms. Lake." Everyone, meaning the woman with the toddler who leaves a tricycle by the stairs. Or me, because I don't bring brownies to the meetings, and I don't say yes when Denise wants to put a "Welcome, bless this mess" sign in the common hallway. I drove to the office and paid the fine in rolled quarters and nickels. I tucked the receipt into my wallet with the neatness of a letter you mean to answer. Remember this detail. Those nickels. The final straw came in spring, when the dogwoods were blooming, like someone had finally remembered to decorate the trees. I was at the thrift when a man in a navy blazer that cost more than my month of groceries walked in with a smile he had practiced on himself in the mirror. Nate Clooney, Trent's fixer, though he called himself community liaison. He asked if he could talk to me outside. He removed his sunglasses with a little flourish, like a magician produces doves. "Ms. Lake," he said, "we have a wonderful opportunity for you." He wanted me to sign a sell now agreement. It would give Trent first right of refusal on my house and the duplex I lived in if I ever decided to sell. In exchange, he would put my name on a list for an apartment in one of the senior living buildings they were going to build, where everything would be maintenance-free and attractive. Maintenance-free is what they say when they mean, "We'll make you call a number if your faucet leaks, and you won't be allowed to plant geraniums on your balcony." I told him no. He leaned closer. "I know your financial situation," he said. I thought of the dent in my car door and the candy jar of nickels and the coffee cans of deeds in Constance's safe. "Do you?" I said. He glanced back at the thrift. "It must be challenging. Inflation. You still working at your age? There are programs." "Programs," I said, "are what replace dignity in sentences." He smiled, a little too wide. "You know, your daughter is marrying into a family that appreciates streamlined decision-making. No offense, Ms. Lake, but you could be a hindrance. A little care now could go a long way towards smoothing things out for Melanie and Graham." There it was. The thing without perfume. "You're trying to buy my silence," I said. "No," he said, actually offended. "I'm trying to give you a soft landing." I pictured Miss Catty's notice. I pictured the men on the third floor doing math with their fingers because the rent had gone up $50 and their grandson's asthma medication had also gone up, and math has always cheated the people who need it most. I pictured Eleanor smirking at my hands. I pictured Melanie's face when she told me I was jealous and small. I felt a calm come over me, the way lakes go still before a storm, and then the wind comes and the ripples make a pattern you could tie a knot to. That night, I pulled the coffee can from behind the flower in the pantry, the one labelled with a piece of masking tape and buttons. Buttons, my foot. I laid my list on the table and drew a line down the middle with my pencil. On one side, what I had. On the other, what I needed. I wrote, slowly, like a promise. A trust. A good lawyer. An investigator. A backbone. And then, on a new line, because I could feel a wildness crackling in my skin like static. A stage. You ever sit up at 3 a.m. with the clock, light like a lighthouse, and laugh? I did, that night. It sounded more like a bark. I was going to throw a funeral for a woman who wasn't dead. I need you to write a trust that activates in a particular way, I told Constance the next day in her office, where the ficus leaves were dusty, and the receptionist wore 2 different earrings that she didn't think matched, but I thought did. It needs to be ironclad, like a vault. No wiggle room, no judge waving it away. It needs to trigger after a public reading. I want there to be a clause read at a certain moment, and when it's read, everything moves. Everything, she repeated, blinking. Constance is the kind of woman who wears lipstick only when she goes to court, sober, direct, federal in her bones. Define everything. I slid the list of LLCs across to her, the names like little jokes across the top of the spreadsheet. Cicada Porch, Juneberry, Penny and Thread, Maple and Vine, Mill Diamond, 18 entities in all. Her eyebrows crept. You can't, Ms. Lake, she said softly. How long have you been doing this? 10 years, I said. Since Victor. And you want to transfer them all at once? Into a community land trust, I said. River Plain Community Trust. It will hold the land and the buildings. Rents will be set by a board that includes tenants and 1 city official that is voted on by the tenants, not appointed by the mayor. There will be a clause that prevents sale to for-profit developers without a unanimous vote. That will never fly, she said automatically, like she was used to telling people the weather. Then she sat back and looked at me with a new set of eyes, the kind that measure without malice. Actually, it might. It will be a fight. You will be sued. I have fought worse, I said. What about your daughter? She asked, pen hovering. Are you cutting her out? Absolutely not, I said. She gets something, but not what she thinks, and not just for being my daughter. She gets a job offer. 1 seat on the trust's marketing committee. Paid. She will have to show up. Also, my house. But for her to take title, she will have to live in it for 2 years and not put it on Airbnb and not pull out the rose bushes. Constance laughed without meaning to, and I saw a flash of who she had been at 25 before law school taught her to flatten everything into case. You know this is going to make people mad, she said. Good, I said. Why the funeral? She asked. Because if you want people to show up all in one place at one time and take you seriously, you tell them you're dead, I said. And then you make them listen. Constance rubbed her forehead. You can't collect life insurance. You can't trigger any legal benefits. I don't want money, I said. I want ears. She sighed and wrote, and in the margin, in little neat, print, she wrote, You bold old bird. I saw it upside down and smiled without telling her. The investigator came through the thrift shop on a Tuesday, wearing a ball cap and pretending to look for a crock pot. His name was Elijah Brand, and he had been a city building inspector until the day he got tired of being asked to look the other way and quit to start his own freelance compliance outfit. He carried himself like a man who had 2 coins in his pocket and no intention of spending them on anyone's opinion. "You're going to want to wear this," he said, sliding me something that looked like a clip for a retractable pen. "Body cam. Legal to record in Ohio if you're part of the conversation. Walk around the block once a day. Smile. See who talks to you." I wore that clip like it was jewelry. Nate and 2 other men from Trent's office approached me twice in 1 week. Once, the wind carried their laughter like knives. "She's old. She's scared. She'll fold," one of them said. They offered me moving assistance. They asked for just a signature to show your interest. I asked for everything in writing and took nothing. Elijah's voice in my ear later when we listened. "That's procurement of property interests under duress," he said, thoughtful. "AG's office will be interested." And then he was quiet for a long time. "You know what you're doing here," he said at last. It wasn't a question. Remember this detail. Elijah's flat, steady voice. A man like that doesn't raise it unless the house is on fire. The journalist came to me because I dropped a hint. 1 line, anonymous, on the tip line of a woman who had been digging into city contracts for a year while people rolled their eyes and said she was a buzzkill. "If you want the real map," I wrote, "watch the tax liens. Follow a man named Halpern and a woman named Vance and a set of LLCs with names that look like a kitchen garden." Anita Qualls called me 2 days later from a number that came up restricted. "Who are you?" she asked, skeptical and curious, the way women sound who have had to prove they can do math out loud while men check their phones. "Call me a quilter," I said. I put pieces together. I'm not ready to put my name on it yet. But if you come to a funeral and bring a cameraman, you're going to want to stay through the benediction. She laughed. "Lady, if you're wasting my time, I will tell the whole city that your potato salad is watery." "I don't make potato salad," I said. "I bake pies." "You a good baker?" "The best," I said. "Ask Pastor Pike. I bake for every church funeral." She paused. "Does he know about this one?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "Pastor Pike is a good man whose primary flaw is thinking he is the only good man. He likes being a shepherd so much he forgets sometimes that the sheep can bite." When I told him I wanted to hold a memorial service for myself, he folded his hands and considered me for a long time. "Evelyn," he said finally. "Why?" "Because people who won't come to hear me at any other time will come then," I said. He shook his head. "This is unorthodox." "I am unorthodox," I said. "I also bake the pies. You going to cross me?" He smiled, despite himself. "I am," he said. "If it's wrong." "It's not," I said. "You will get to preach the gospel to the mayor and a developer and a woman with pearls the size of marbles. They will actually listen. Do it for Jesus, if not for me." He stared at the ceiling as if he could see through the plaster to God leaning on the rafters. "All right," he said. "But there will be no deception." "No one will lie," I said. "We will not say I am dead. We will say we gather to mark the passing of my life as it has been." The difference matters. Words matter. If you ever had to talk a bill collector into giving you another week, you know that. The invitation went out on cream paper Melanie picked because she thought the ladies at the club would approve. She agreed to help because she thought it was a chance to show the Rutherfords my continued awkwardness, and because she wanted the grieving spotlight on her terms. It was called a celebration of life. She posted it with a photo that made my eyes look softer than they are now. "She's had such a hard year," she wrote. "Please join us in honoring my mother." In the meantime, the trust documents were filed. Constance, careful, meticulous, booked a downtown notary who knew how to keep her mouth shut and filed a thing called a deed of gift that sits in a drawer like a waiting violin. We formed a board for River Plain Community Trust. 3 tenants I trusted with my life, Miss Catty included. One pastor from across town who had never once let a politician hold his microphone. A teacher from the middle school who'd started a chess club with a budget of 0 and 1 slot for the city, which would be filled by whoever the tenants voted for in a regular election administered by the League of Women Voters. If you smiled at that last part, good. I did too. It was my lawyer's idea. She said, "If you don't name who runs the vote, they'll stack it. I trust old ladies in cardigans with clipboards more than I trust God." I recorded a video with Elijah's help. We did it in my kitchen at the little table with the burn mark, where Victor almost set the placemat on fire the year we didn't have money for a turkey and made pot roast instead. I wore no makeup, and the good sweater Melanie bought me at Christmas when she was still trying to make me presentable. I looked into the camera and told the truth. Not the whole truth, yet, but enough to make anyone with a pulse lean forward. "If you're seeing this," I said, "I am still very much alive, and I am about to disappoint some of you and save a great many more." The week of the funeral dawned cold and bright. The sky was the blue of children's book water. The day before, a woman from the church kitchen named Joyce called to ask if she should do ham or roast beef. "Ham," I said. "The kind you slice thin and lay on Parker House rolls. Keep extra mustard." "Parker House rolls," she said, delighted. "Now you're talking." Joyce matters later. Remember her. The morning of, I came in a lift. I asked the driver to drop me 2 blocks from the church because I wanted the walk. I wanted to feel the city under my shoes, like it was a heartbeat. The river smell came up strong in my nose, that old iron and algae mix, and I could hear the church bell ring with the pure sound you only hear from a bell that's older than anyone in the pews. It was crowded. The parking lot looked like a car commercial. Melanie had done her job. I stood in the vestibule unseen for a minute, watching the little tableau. Eleanor ran the condolence table like a wedding planner, taking notes in a leather folio and nodding graciously as if she had invented mourning spans. Mayor Lila strode in with a security man and kissed air by 3 people's faces and made sure the camera from the back of the sanctuary caught her at a good angle. Trent shook hands with men who smelled like cologne and wives who wore their hair in careful helmets. Denise from the HOA whispered in a cluster of women, "Number 1 on the list of people who love to be useful when someone else is sad." Pastor Pike stood near the altar with his Bible open and a face like he had swallowed a penny, nervous and excited and morally constipated. The casket was closed. Inside, there were 2 quilts I had sewn as a girl and a stack of old Sunday bulletins bound with ribbon. That was my body, memory and paper. Constance stood at the lectern in a black suit that made her look like a hymn with a secret verse. I walked in during the middle of "Great is Thy Faithfulness." I've never liked that hymn because it moves slow enough for you to think too much. People saw me about halfway down the aisle. A gasp is a living thing. It crawls. My name, from somewhere. "Evelyn?" Pastor Pike's mouth opened. Melanie stood. Her face went the colour of paper in the sun. I walked up the aisle like I was carrying a broom. "Read the clause," I said to Constance, and she did. God bless her brave and precise heart, because she is a woman who understands a cue. I can still hear her voice. "This is the clause outlined in the River Plain Community Trust deed, to be read upon the gathering of the community as witnessed by elected officials, the clergy, and the people. Upon pronouncement, all holdings listed in Schedule A, including property held by River Laundry LLC, Maple and Vine LLC, Cicada Porch LLC, Penny and Thread LLC, Mill Diamond LLC, and 13 additional entities, transfer by deed of gift to the River Plain Community Trust. Waves. You could feel the shock roll the room like a boat rocking. Melanie's jaw dropped so far it unhinged. Eleanor made a noise like a tea kettle. Someone's hand went to their pearls for the first time in their life, not as an affectation. Mayor Lila stood, then sat, then stood again, like she had to remind her legs to act. Trent didn't move at all, which told me he had been bracing for something. He hadn't braced for this. And furthermore, Constance continued, no sale of any property or interest owned by the trust may be made to any private developer or corporation in which an elected official of the city, county, or state holds an interest. Additionally, any funds collected as grants or public monies triggered by new zoning or public improvement attributable to these parcels will be funneled to the trust for the purposes of rent stabilization, repair of essential services, and the creation of public spaces, including but not limited to a community kitchen, a winter warming centre, and an after-school program in the Sprague block. Illegal, Trent said loudly, as if volume could make things true. This is an illegal restraint on alienation. Sit down, Constance said without looking at him. It was a tone that could make a dog fold his paws. That's when I turned to the camera on the back wall and nodded. Elijah, in the choir loft, touched his cap. The screen behind the altar flickered and my kitchen appeared. Me, in that sweater. Me, looking right down a lens that looked into 100 faces. If you don't want to hear this, I said on the screen, get up now. Nobody will stop you. But if you stay, you're staying for the truth. And then it all came. On the screen, me talking. In the room, me standing. The truth layering over itself like a cake. I told them how I had bought tax liens when the city wasn't looking because it never looked where the light didn't flatter. How I had quietly rebuilt roofs and installed working locks and forgiven late rent when a kid needed his asthma inhaler. How River Laundry wasn't a blight. It was a public service. How a city is not a board game. How I had asked for meetings and gotten brushed off, and how I had gotten sick of being told to be patient while rent went up today, food went up today, dignity went up today. Then Elijah's recordings played. Nate's smooth voice offering moving assistance like cyanide in a sugar cube. A city zoning commissioner, voice sticky with false heart, saying, we can expedite certain permits if certain people show a willingness to partner. A check in the mayor's husband's consulting firm's name to a shell company that had one job, advertising strategy, with a price tag that could have bought River Laundry 3 new washers. The screen split. On one side, my kitchen. On the other, a spreadsheet Anita had made, names redacted, except where the law made them public. In the third row of the room, Anita stood up accidentally when she saw her graphic appear and then sat down, red-faced, grinning, despite herself. Pastor Pike, to his credit, didn't try to shut it down. He closed his Bible. He took a step back. Sometimes you have to know the difference between your sermon and somebody else's. Mayor Lila stood all the way up then. This is a stunt, she said, hard. It's a smear campaign. No, ma'am, came a voice from the side aisle, soft and purposeful. Dana Kells, Assistant Attorney General for our region, in a sensible suit with a badge clipped inside her jacket like a shy tooth. It's evidence. We have the rest on a warrant. Behind her, 2 men who looked like they'd come to fix the organ crossed their arms and, without being dramatic about it, blocked the door. Trent still didn't move. He had gone still as an iguana in the sun. That's a man who can metabolize shock. He smiled even. "Evelyn?" he said, testing the sound of my name like he'd bitten into a fig and found it too sweet. "You've been busy." "More than you know," I said. That was when Eleanor leaned toward Melanie and said, in a voice that carried because she had never learned to modulate it for shame, "Do something. Cry." Melanie turned her head slowly, like a mechanical doll whose battery is running out. She looked at me. It was not a look you ever want to see from your child. Calculation, grappling with love, and losing for the first time. She didn't cry. She stood. "My mother," she said, and people quieted because they thought maybe she would salvage the Rutherford's side, "has always been dramatic." A nervous ripple of laughter. "She also has always done what she thought was right, often in the most infuriating way possible." She swallowed, her throat working. "I didn't know about any of this." "You didn't ask," I said gently, and she flinched because she knew it was true. "Even if this is legal," she said, "even if it works, didn't you think to tell your family?" "You mean you?" I said. I softened my voice. "You have a family now that is not me. You have a family that will not live in the buildings my tenants live in. You have a family that can afford to lose a month of rent. We're not," she began, and stopped because she realized that "we" was not a pronoun she could get out of her mouth without tasting something rotten. "Read the rest," I said to Constance. "We're not done." Additionally, Constance read, 10% of net rental income will be dedicated to direct scholarships for Millerton residents seeking vocational training, education, and small business grants administered by the Trust. Preference will be given to applicants who have lived in trust buildings for 3 or more years. Preference will also be given, she paused, and a little smile touched her mouth, to applicants who make a really good pie. The laughter broke like a dam then, relieved and shocked and human. That sound saved us all for a second. People needed to breathe. "And to you, Ms. Lake?" Mayor Lila said, pushing forward through the first row, frowning like a teapot pouring out hot water. "What do you get out of this?" "I get a good night's sleep," I said, "and a chair on the board, and my every Tuesday at River Laundry, where I will continue to fold towels and talk to Miss Catty about her niece's grades, and my name on nothing. We will not be doing naming opportunities like the Rutherford Wing on anything. We will have none of that in River Plain. We will have benches and trees and a plaque that says, 'This was built by people who live here.' That will be enough." Eleanor sputtered. "You are cutting out your own blood." "No," I said. "I am letting her choose. Your son is welcome to sign up to help. You are welcome to sign up to help. Bring your checkbook. Bring your clothes for donation, not the ragged things you can't sell at your garage sale." Anita, from the back, called out, "Ms. Lake, Evelyn, who owns the building we're in right now?" I smiled. "That," I said, "is an interesting question." Joyce, bless her, appeared at the back of the sanctuary with a tray of Parker House rolls, like a waitress in a play about communion. "Anyone who needs a roll to keep from fainting, I got you," she said. "Trust a church kitchen to see what the spirit can't." She matters, remember? She matters because while everyone was looking at me, Joyce was offering food, and a woman who offers food always knows who's starving. "Constance," I said, and it felt good to say her name, like it was the name of a blade that cuts only what you tell it to. "Please read the addendum about the Sprague block." Her fingers ran along the page as if she could feel the heat in the words. "Sprague block, inclusive of all units on floors 2 and 3, and storefronts 1 through 5 on the first floor," she read. are hereby transferred immediately to the River Plain Community Trust as a gift. All pending sale agreements dated within the last 90 days are voided due to seller's revocation under the 30-day cooling period as stipulated in paragraph 14 of the draft sales contract. The landlord of record was River Laundry LLC. Miss Catty put her hand to her mouth and sobbed a sound that felt like a victory trumpet. "Amen!" someone else shouted from the balcony. Elijah, up in the loft, smiled for the first time I'd ever seen. "And," Constance said, "the Trust has accepted a donation of one downtown building known as the Starlight Auditorium." Heads whipped. That got the mayor's full attention. The Starlight is beloved and shabby and has been the subject of 1,000 Save Our Theatre campaigns that never got off the ground because people would rather put their names on a park bench than the lobby of a theatre where teenagers might make out. It was owned by an LLC whose owner was, until now, unknown. "Who owned the Starlight?" Anita said, out loud, and you could hear it in dozens of whispers too. "I did," I said, "through Maple and Vine. But I'm giving it to River Plain, with conditions." "Which are?" Mayor Lila demanded. "No corporate naming rights," I said. "Discount tickets for school kids, free rehearsal space for the West Side Drumline, and one weekend a month for public relief work. We open the lobby to be a cooling centre in summer and a warming centre in winter, and we let the churches serve stew without making them fill out a 12-page form." "Unbelievable," Trent muttered. "No," I said. "Believable, if you know me." Dana cleared her throat again, and you could see her official face soften into a human one. "We will be asking some of you to come with us down to the courthouse," she said, gentle, "to answer some questions about procurement, bribery and fraud. Ms. Moreno, if you will give me copies." She nodded, and a quiet hum of radio static came from the back as a couple more men in suits and a woman with a ponytail moved toward the center aisle. Trent leaned toward Mayor Lila. "Don't say a word," he hissed, "but microphones are cruel," and one on the pulpit picked up his whisper and fed it to the back of the room. People turned. They're good at smelling what's rotten when there's a crack in the decanter. "Read the part about the funeral?" I said to Constance softly. She knew. "It was Evelyn's idea," Constance said, eyes winking at me like a friend in a caper. "To make the trigger for the Trust's activation a public reading at a service called by her family. We did not, in any document, state that she is dead." She paused. Her daughter chose the word funeral for the invitations. Melanie rocked on her heels as if she'd been pushed. She started. "It's okay," I said, and it was, even as my heart knocked at my ribs like a kid asking to come in out of the rain. "You didn't know. You did what everyone expected you to do." "Mom," she whispered, and that word again, this time without the edge. Just a little girl in there after all. "You were going to abandon her," Eleanor hissed to Graham, as if I wasn't there. "We should go. We should—" "You are free to leave," Dana said to Eleanor without looking at her, the perfect combination of polite and steel. "But if your husband has ever consulted for Halpin and Company, you might want to stay." Eleanor closed her mouth with a click. "Here is the part I haven't told you yet, the part that hurts so good it still wakes me up at night smiling and sad at once. In the video, after I finished telling the truth, past the evidence and the conditions and the clauses, I looked into the camera like it was a person I loved, and I said, 'Melanie.' I said her name, and then I swallowed like I was swallowing a 20-year-old apology. You will want to be angry at me. Be angry. Then show up. There's a seat for you. It pays. You're going to have to take criticism from Miss Catty, And you are going to have to learn that sometimes the people you think you are saving you. You will not get a mansion by doing this. You will get a city. Choose well." She watched herself be named from the third pew and flinched. There is no armor for hearing your name said like a blessing when you think it's going to be said like a curse. And that is when, don't laugh, Pastor Pike stepped forward and did the only thing that made sense in a room full of sense he didn't write. He said, "Clear and simple and strong. Let us pray." And everybody bowed their heads, even the mayor, even Trent, even Eleanor, who never bows for anyone but Jesus and the chairwoman of anything. He asked for wisdom. He asked for mercy. He asked for courage. He asked wisely for people to stop making gods out of money and to remember that names on buildings are not the same as kindness in hearts. I added in my own mind, and make the ham good, because if God listens, he listens to everything, and that seemed important. The immediate after you can feel a room's temperature drop when a thing stops being a spectacle and starts being real. The minute the word arrest is not in someone's mouth, but in the hallway on a clipboard, people see edges where there were none. Dana nodded to one of her colleagues, and he walked toward the aisle where the zoning commissioner sat, sweating through his shirt. "Sir, I need you to come with me," he said, very softly, and you could tell he had a mother who taught him to be gentle with foolish people. Trent put a hand on the commissioner's shoulder, as if to steady him, and got his wrist unclipped from a watch by someone else who was very fast and took photos with his eyes. He didn't touch me. He didn't even look at me. Later, people said he didn't think I existed. Not in his world. Mayor Lila asked for a lawyer. Dana said, "Yes, ma'am," and stepped to the side to let her call one. Anita scribbled notes and breathed like she'd run a race. Elijah took off his cap and ran a hand over his head and looked, just for a moment, exhausted, the way men look after they've held their breath a long time. Denise from the HOE came up to me and did the most human thing she had done in 2 years. She cried. "Ms. Lake," she said, "I'm so sorry about the trash can fine." It was, in a way, the biggest apology in the room. It cracked the ceiling. I hugged her. I patted her back. "It's all right," I said. "We'll waive it if you vote right." People laughed, and the tension unspooled another inch. Joyce appeared with a roll and tucked it into my hand. "You did good," she said, eyes wet. She squeezed my palm. There was a little square of paper under the roll, and when I got a chance, I unfolded it. It was a list of names. "Kids who need after-school snack," it said. "Single mums who could handle the kitchen on Tuesdays. Mr. Washington in 3B, too proud to ask for help, has rats. Call me." I kept that list in my purse like it was a letter from an old boyfriend. "What do we do now?" Melanie asked me at last, voice small. "We eat ham," I said. "We let the lawyer talk. We let the reporter write. And then we go down to the Sprague and tell Miss Catty she has a lease in her own name." "You," she started, then stopped, like the words wouldn't come if she asked them fast. "Do you hate me?" "I love you more than I love being right," I said. "But not more than I love being good." She frowned. "Is that a Jesus thing?" "It's an Evelyn thing," I said. "Sometimes they're the same." Graham approached, hands in pockets, head down like a boy caught cheating at cards. "Ms. Lake," he said. You should have protected my daughter from your mother," I said briskly. "But you didn't. Learn from this. Or don't. Either way, the city will not be yours to chew." He flushed. "You don't have to be so sharp," I said. "I am dull when people are kind. Otherwise I am a knife. Learn to like it. In the fellowship hall, the ham tasted like victory. I stood with a paper plate and a roll and made eye contact with every person who came near. "The river smells good today," I said. We talked about the river, the air, the weather. Its smallness was a mercy to us all. People need to be allowed to turn big things into small things to survive. Anita asked for a statement, and I gave her 5 sentences anyone could quote. "This is not one woman's crusade," I said. "It's a city's promise to itself. The law is on our side because we wrote it that way. We are not embarrassed by being poor or careful, and we're not afraid." She scribbled and looked at me like a woman looking at a recipe she is going to try as soon as she gets home. When we left the church, the news vans had multiplied. Somebody started a chant, but it wasn't good, so we didn't take it up. A chant should be earned. On the steps, Dana took questions. "No, we will not comment on ongoing investigations." "Yes, some of these recordings appear to show procurement irregularities." "Yes, the Attorney General takes this seriously." "No, Ms. Lake is not under investigation for fraud. She did not fake her death. She threw a party." Then came the real work. It is one thing to flip a table. It is another to set it again and feed everyone at it. The larger reckoning investigations have a smell. If you've never been around one, it's like hot printer toner and coffee and nervous sweat. The courthouse buzzed. The county clerk wore a new lipstick like armor. Everywhere. People who had avoided each other for years sat next to each other on hard benches and shared mints. 2 days after the funeral, the zoning commissioner resigned. A week later, the consulting firm owned by the mayor's husband shuttered due to personal reasons. Another week, and Trent held a press conference with a backdrop of workers in hard hats and said words like misunderstood and partner and innovation and the future of Millerton is in good hands. Anita posted a video of him saying, "I never," followed by a cut of him saying in Elijah's recording, "We can make that go away." And the whole town learned a new word, context. Meanwhile, the board of River Plain Community Trust met in a borrowed room above River Laundry, with a table that had one leg shorter than the others, and chairs that were a little sticky, because they had been donated by a bar downtown that upgraded last year. We ate grocery store cookies and passed around binders. Miss Catty wore a t-shirt that said, "Fold for your life," and the most businesslike expression I had ever seen on her face. The pastor from across town, the one who had never let a politician touch his mic, brought a gavel someone had given him as a joke. "I hate this thing," he said, "but sometimes it gets people's attention without me raising my voice." He banged it once, gently, and we began. You would have laughed if you saw us. Grown adults blinking at budgets like they were planets. We figured it out. We set the rent stabilization at 3% increases year on year, with exceptions for folks on fixed incomes, and a hardship fund for folks whose kids got out of line and used more hot water than any one child should. We hired a contractor who had been fired by Trent's outfit for going too slow and told him we wanted slow. We put timers on lights and better locks on doors and a trash system that would keep Denise off my back. Every meeting began with the same words. "Who's not here?" We asked it because we never wanted to turn into the thing we were fighting. Rooms full of people who didn't have to live with the decisions they made. If someone couldn't afford to come, we sent a bus pass. We rotated the meeting place so nobody felt like it was someone else's building. We set a childcare line item in the budget like it was a roof. It is. People without childcare cannot make decisions about their own lives. I will die on that hill. Anita wrote a series that won her an award and death threats, which is how you know she did her job. Elijah got his name in the paper once for community hero, and he blushed so hard it turned into a rumor he'd proposed to someone. He hadn't. He was married to the city. The mayor held out longer than anyone thought she could, then came to a meeting of the city council in a navy suit and said words like regrets and errors in judgment and the honor of serving. She resigned on a Thursday at 4, and by Friday morning the coffee shop had a new drink called the Lila, bitter espresso and a twist of orange peel that looked like a smirk. Trent got indicted. Not for the big stuff. It's never for the big stuff. For tax evasion, and for falsifying a permit, and for a smaller bribe no one had seen coming from a different development in another town. They got him. He'll be out. People like him don't stay in long. But we'll be here when he gets out. That's the thing bullies never plan for. The person they tried to ruin, still being there to meet them at the corner store. People came out of the woodwork with stories. A woman whose cousin lost her lease when she complained about mold. A man who got told to move his food truck because he didn't fit the aesthetic. A teacher whose students raised money for a robotics club only to have their gym time cancelled because a new yoga studio paid more for the space. We wrote it all down. We said we couldn't fix everything, then we fixed what we could. When we couldn't fix it, we wrote a letter and printed it on thick paper and mailed it certified so whoever got it would remember how heavy paper feels in the hand when someone takes you seriously. Redemption, repair, and reward. There's a moment after war when people get tired of being upset and start to be new. You can feel the air move. It's like the first warm day when you see kids outside in shorts, even though the breeze still makes your teeth chatter. That was summer. The river smelled like fish and fireworks. The Starlight's doors were propped open, and you could hear the drumline practicing on the stage, their sticks like rain on a roof. In the lobby, a table with a sign that said, Community Cooling Center, water and chairs and quiet. Melanie showed up the first Tuesday with a clipboard and a face like she might throw up. She stood at the door like a bouncer and practiced her smile. She took suggestions. The first time Miss Catty told her she'd spelled Wednesday wrong on the flyer and needed to learn how to laminate, she didn't cry. The 5th time, she cried. "This is hard," she said, snotty and honest. And the room forgave her. That's the thing about rooms full of the right people. You can bring your broken and get patched up. "I'm sorry," she said to me one night, after everyone left, the floor of the Starlight smelling like bleach and grapes. Not just for the wedding. For every time I sighed at you for saving nickels. For every time I told my friends you were quirky, like a dog in a sweater. For, God, Mum, for thinking you were less. "I kept the dent on the car for camouflage," I said. She laughed through tears. "I know," she said. "Everyone knows now." We sat on the sticky lobby chairs and ate leftover grapes and listened to the echoes in a building that had never been so alive. "I wanted you to have the house," I said. "I wrote it so you could, if you wanted it." "I do," she said. "I want it because it's yours, because it's ours." "You will plant tomatoes," I said, "and you will not rip out the rose bushes." She rolled her eyes. "God, Mom, the rose bushes are hideous," she said, and I laughed. "Fine. 1 bush," she said, wiping her face and sniffing. 2 maximum. Do not ask for 3. "There's a moral here," I said. "About money and names and coffee cans. But if I say it now, it will sound like a Hallmark card." We sat in the quiet. "Just remember," I said, "dignity is a quiet thing. It's a person carrying their groceries without making noise about it. It's someone folding someone else's laundry. It's a man who pulls the weeds in front of his stoop because he knows nobody else will. And he does it in the dark. That is the city. It's never the man cutting the red ribbon. The unexpected end. You want the twist. I can feel you leaning in. Fine. Here it is. 2 months after the funeral, an envelope came, old style, with a stamp that had a barn on it and a faint smell like someone's closet. It was addressed to me in Victor's hand. I didn't know that was possible. But Constance, careful as always, had handled Victor's will 15 years ago, and apparently he had written me a letter she forgot to deliver because it had been misfiled with some church documents. "I'm so sorry," she said, sheepish for one of the only times I've ever seen. It was behind a file for Lake, church. It should have been Lake, personal. We never separate people from their ministries, do we? The humour was weak, but there. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it with a butter knife like I was 8, and it was a present. The paper had yellowed. The ink bled a little where Victor's hand had pressed too hard. In it, he wrote about a man who had come to him at the plant, a guy with a briefcase and a smile who said there was a way to help the city by investing in something called an improvement zone. "I told him to shove it," Victor wrote, and I laughed out loud. "But I took his flyer and put it in my lunchbox and brought it home to show you because I knew you would have thoughts." He wrote, "If this city ever tries to sell itself like a garage sale, if some suit ever comes with a folder and says, 'Revitalize,' and you can't smell the river on him, tie a rope around what matters and pull. You always were the strongest girl I knew. You always will be. Be poor if you have to. Be invisible if you need to. But don't you ever be small." There was a PS. "I fixed the dent in the Buick." I cried on that letter until the ink blotted a little more. Then I folded it and put it in my coffee can labelled buttons. I took a nickel from the jar and put it on top. A little weight to keep it down. Remember those nickels? The ones I paid Denise with. The ones I rolled and rolled. They outweigh most things. 3 months after, we opened the River Plain Community Kitchen in the Sprague block. The after-school program met in the old smoke shop that had been scrubbed so hard it gleamed. The kids' voices filled the hall. We set up a long table for homework and a shorter table for chess, and the teacher from the middle school taught them to think 3 moves ahead while I taught them to roll pie crust. "You'll need this skill," I told them, and they laughed because they thought I meant pie. I meant everything. The mayor's election came and went. A woman who had never thought she would be mayor ran, and people laughed until they didn't. She won when she realized she didn't need to be perfect. She needed to be honest. She came to our opening and did not hold the microphone. Trent's company tried to sue the trust. Constance filed a reply that might as well have been a poem. The judge agreed. The case got tossed. Trent tried to buy the Starlight anyway. "It's a public asset," he said on a podcast, smarmy and confident. Anita called into the podcast and said, "So are you?" And the host laughed, but then didn't, because sometimes jokes stop being funny when you think about them 2 seconds longer. A little before Thanksgiving, I walked down to River Laundry and watched Miss Catty teach a kid who'd never had a washer at home how to make a quarter go far. "Separate your colours," she said, "and your life. You don't put red socks with white shirts, and you don't put mean friends with good days." They both laughed. I leaned against the door and felt like a person who had built a thing you can't knock down by pushing. I am not a saint. I am not a genius. I am just a woman who kept her hands useful and her mouth quiet until the day it needed to be loud. You can do it too. You don't have to own half a city. Own your block. Own your hallway. Own the corner of the church kitchen where you put the rolls. Own your checkbook and your anger and your laugh. Months later, we held a real celebration at the Starlight. We hung a banner that said River Light Commons, even though Constance doesn't like naming things because it tempts fate. But we needed something, and it sounded like a promise. The drumline played. The kids in chess club wore little paper crowns. The HVAC clicked on and off, old but working, and the light from the marquee made everyone look young for a minute. I wore a good dress, not because I had to, but because it felt like honouring the girl I had been, who would never have believed that a room full of people would clap for her for anything except pie. I sat on the stage and told the story of the dent in the car and the coffee can and Victor's letter. When I got to the part about the funeral, the room laughed and cried in the right places. That's how you know a city is healing. It can laugh at its own survival. At the end, I stood at the mic and said the only thing I knew how to say without sounding like the Hallmark card I warned you about. "This is yours," I said, hands open. "Don't let anyone take it. Not for a speech, not for a donation, not for a ribbon. If they want to help, hand them a broom." If this story hit home, subscribe and drop a comment with your city or town. I like knowing whose kitchens I'm visiting when I talk. Tell me what corner you're holding up. Tell me who your Miss Catty is. Tell me what your river smells like. And if you're the kind of person who's been pretending to be broke because it keeps the wolves at bay, welcome. I see you. We're building something, quiet and strong. It's not money. It's our names in each other's mouths, said kindly. Epilogue. A year after my funeral, I went to an actual funeral. Pastor Pike had retired, and a younger woman took his place, someone with an undercut and a laugh that carried to the back row. She preached like jazz. Joyce was there, in a new dress, and she squeezed my hand as she passed me a Parker House roll one more time. "You never know who needs a roll," she said. On my way out, I bumped into Denise, who had become the fiercest defender of city recycling codes you've ever met. "We're doing a class on composting next week," she said breathlessly, "and an apartment manager workshop on not fining people for trash can lids that don't fit because someone in the building has a baby and uses extra bags. We made a new policy," she said, chest swelling, "called Compassion Clause." "Good," I said. "The city will be better for it." I drove home, dent still in the car, because now it felt like a medal. At a red light, I looked up and saw the Starlight marquee. Community night. Bring your knitting. Bring your news. Bring yourself. The light turned green. I waited a second longer than I had to. Sometimes it's good to let someone else go first. That, too, is community. So no, I did not die. Not really. I staged a funeral and made it a birth. And if the story gets told like an urban legend after I'm gone for real, that woman who tricked the whole town and then fed them ham, I won't mind. Let it inflate. Let it float. Let it bring people to the door who would otherwise stay home thinking nothing ever changes. Because here's the last thing I'll tell you. It's true that I owned half the city. It's also true that it never really belonged to me. It belonged to the woman whose hands smelled like bleach and dough, to the boy at the chess table who learned how knights move and then taught his grandmother, to the pastor who stepped back from the microphone, to the tenant who banged a trash can lid into place at midnight so Denise could sleep, to my daughter who learned to laminate. And to you, maybe, if you're the one who comes to the door and says, "What can I do?" I'll hand you a broom, or a pen, or a ham roll, and we'll get started. End.